Right then, welcome back to the channel. This is a massive, massive summer for Manchester United. One of the biggest summers in the club's history, because it's the first time in 19 years that we've had any sort of change of ownership. And that change of ownership brings with it a change of different responsibilities. You know, we're not perhaps having to go to the Glazers in the same way that we would have done to make our case. It isn't Woodward or Judge or Arnold now that's making the decisions, but it seems like there is a football board being assembled. Not all here yet. INEOS have got a lot of work to do, and the work has to follow a plan. And they have to set out with a vision, and they have to then start along that path to be able to deliver what it is that Manchester United needs. And that is a foundation setting that we can build on and go and be successful from. The INEOS takeover was probably, I don't know if I can call it a positive or a negative yet, because we are yet to see, but it was a massive thing that happened last season. Whether it's positive or negative depends on how it goes from here on out. But it was a massive thing that happened, and they've got a lot of work to do, especially going into this summer and preparing to overhaul what everyone would agree, I think, is a substandard footballing department at the football club. Now, the season is over. All eyes are on INEOS because there are some major, major decisions, and there's also some teething problems and some issues that we have to resolve. INEOS are going to be making a lot of these decisions, if not the vast majority of these decisions, but there is a lot of them to make. There are a lot of things that have to happen, and I think it'd be setting too high an expectation if we was like, right, well, we'll get through this summer, we'll get all of these people involved, and then we'll just be sound going into next year. I really don't think that that's about to be the case. So there's been some teething problems. Now, before we look at what INEOS's big decisions will be, I think it's important to acknowledge that there's been some issues and also what those issues are. There's only really Jason Wilcox, it seems, working day-to-day at Manchester United so far. Omar Barada comes later down the line. Dan Ashworth is still trying to extricate himself from Newcastle, as it seems at the moment. There's all, did they sack him? Did he resign? Can he leave yet? Is he still on gardening leave? It's a bit of a mess. And I think Newcastle intended it to be that. But there's an even bigger, more monumental decision looming over everybody, and that's the future of Eric Ten Hag. You know, is it fair to make any decision on Ten Hag without all of the board members being present and working at the club? No, Sir Dave Brailsford, he's there. Jim Radcliffe, yes, he's overseeing stuff. Jason Wilcox is there. And that's it, really. Like, the other major executives that are going to have a major hand in where the football club goes forward, technically, even if you believe that or not, technically are not going to be in the building just yet. Now, early on, there was rumours that INEOS made their mind up and that Eric Ten Hag wasn't going to be the guy, and going forward, United were going to be bringing in a new manager. Okay. I might not agree with that, but okay, if that's the decision that you've made, that's the decision that you made. Every new owner wants to bring in their own manager. And even though I think you could end up going from Tuchel to Potter, because that's what Todd wanted, sometimes it's better working with the man that you know you can work with than it is just keeping somebody in place because they was already here when you got here. I would hope that they look into it thoroughly. What worries me is that they've looked into it, decided that he has to go, and then the FA Cup win has happened, and now they're 50-50 on whether he should go. Now, my whole feeling is I think you should be allowed to stay. And that's not even necessarily for Ten Hag's benefit. I think that's more for INEOS' benefit. If you allow him to stay, the outward projection of what you're about to the world is that you're about patience and you're about finding the right thing. So when you approach, a 22-year-old centre-half that's, got a couple of options on his table, one of them being Manchester United, your track record should start to show, listen, yes, we're INEOS and we're not the Glazers. Here's the things that we've done at the club. All of the appointments so far seem really intelligent, seem really switched on. Then if you sack the manager after he's just won an FA Cup, everyone goes. And then if it is a Tuchel and Potter situation, like we just saw at Chelsea, then you go, okay. Everyone starts to question your decision-making. You didn't have to make the decision. You can kick it down the road. You can bring in all of your buddies behind the scenes, and you can start doing the recruitment that you know is going to start improving what happens on the pitch, and then bring in your manager when it's going to actually have an impact for him that comes in. Because if you bring in a new manager in on Monday, guess what? There's probably no structures in place, and there's probably not enough work being done this summer for it to be super successful for him. So why would you make that decision right now? Because the second you appoint that manager, the clock is ticking on him, and people are starting to judge you because that's your appointment. But anyway, there's still got to be a plan. Regardless of whether half of the board's there and half the board's not, there's still got to be a plan. With or without the backroom staff integrated, you can't just sit there waiting for them. You've got to go with what you've got. Whoever else is ready to go, they've got to work to their strengths, and they're going to have to work quickly. But you do have to make a little bit of a decision on what's going to happen with the manager, I think. There's going to be little alterations. They'll come as people start arriving and people's jobs start developing. But I'll roll through what the people are and what their roles are going to be. So we've got Omar Barada, we've got him as CEO. So what Edward would try to do, in charge of commercial and sporting directions, figurehead of movement, final stamp of approval before overseeing everything. You've got Dan Ashworth as sporting director. He's in charge of ensuring United have got the very best possible in terms of things like analysis, scouting, recruitment departments, tasked with working closely with the manager and the other significant backroom powers, trying to set out a plan to bring in the vision. Jason Wilcox will be technical director. He's tasked with overseeing the club's technical departments. He'll work closely with the likes of Barada and Ashworth, but primarily the Centre of Sports Science, medical, recruitment, development, performance analysis, that sort of stuff. Dave Brailsford, he's INEOS head of sport, so he won't be at Carrington day to day, but he'll have a bit of an overarching kind of director sort of role to it, consultancy kind of role to it. He'll work in close collaboration with the senior management on that, and he looks to try and create the best departments in there. So the sports science, the medical, the recruitment, he's all about those marginal gain type things. So he'll try and be streamlining all of those sorts of things and asking for people thinking outside the box and all that kind of stuff. He's all about the 1%. He's got a long-standing relationship with people already. And he's accomplished a lot already by leaving the football decisions to football people, so I like that. Jim Radcliffe as INEOS CEO. He is a minority shareholder of Manchester United, but he is the single largest shareholder of Manchester United. New owner, the true figurehead. Seems like he's going to be very hands-off with the real intricate football kind of stuff, but he has an extreme interest in, and I think he'll be quite vocal in any of the meetings. Seems to be a lot more involved and certainly a lot more passionate. I mean, the guy's a United fan. It was clearly a mistake for him to really try and ham up how much he liked Chelsea in the midst of him buying Chelsea, because anytime something goes wrong, it's going to get thrown at him. But he's clearly a United fan. He was at the 99 final. He's always been vocally pro-United, and, the things he says publicly about United previously was like, yeah, I'd buy United if it was available. And he put his money where his mouth is and did buy us. So, it remains to be seen what happens next. He's pissed off a few people at United already by saying that the work from home ain't happening no more. You need to get your asses to work. And I think he'll be continuing along that sort of ethos throughout the club. And to be honest, it probably needs it. It sucks if that's one of the people that's been offered the resignation. But ultimately, I think there's probably been a lot of yes men behind the scenes. And I'm not talking about the people, because people will be like, oh, my Auntie Christine works in a megastore. I'm not talking about your Auntie Christine, right? We're talking about all of the yes men that make this football club have some shit decisions. And to be honest, all right, megastore aside, because I don't really fucking know what goes on in the megastore, but things like the ticket department can absolutely be improved. So, improve everywhere. And then we've got Jean-Claude Blanc, who at the moment is down as an interim CEO while we wait for Barada to be appointed. I'd be surprised if Jean-Claude Blanc doesn't continue in some sort of capacity afterwards, but I don't know what that role's going to be, or even if a role will be offered, so I can't really comment on what that'll be. At the moment, he's the one doing the work that Barada will be doing once he arrives, so we'll see how that sort of shakes out and pans out for him once Barada is installed. Right then, on to summer. Summer is going to be massive, and it all starts with getting those backroom staff in and getting them to work, whether that's interviewing existing staff, reviewing existing procedures, implementing the new procedures. All of that requires doing. Barada is a done deal, and it's just a matter of running down the clock until he can arrive. Ashworth, it seems like he's all about sorting something out with either compensation or just getting it over the line with Newcastle, because they're being difficult because they can afford to be difficult and they don't want to help strengthen a rival over an important summer. I get it, it's frustrating, but I get it. And before any major decision is made, we need all hands on deck. But you have to sort out what's going on with Ten Hag urgently. This needs to be made clear within the next... honestly, this weekend. It can't go beyond this weekend. Imagine sacking him beyond this weekend. And if you're not sacking him, you've got to make a statement that we're right behind him. All of the stuff that came out in the press was bollocks. Even if it wasn't bollocks, just tell everyone it was bollocks. Because otherwise you look fucking weird and weak by changing your mind on a manager because the fans said so. It's not... listen, I think fans should be listened to. I made a fucking football club and made it fan-owned, and we have a democratic decision-making process. But you can't just listen to fans on social media. And you can't even necessarily just listen to the fans in the ground, because in 1989, the fellow with the Terrar Fergie thing would have fucked him off and we'd have ended up with George Graham or someone. That you have to have people who know what's been going on behind the scenes to make informed decisions. The things that we see out on the football pitch aren't the totality of what's going on at the football club. So there has to be people who can make informed decisions and make informed decisions, whether that means he stays, whether that means he goes. But you can't just listen to fans in terms of what's going on, because, like I said, fans would have sacked Fergie, and I think we could all agree probably would have been a mistake, wouldn't it? But it needs to happen. We need to know who's in charge. The players that you're trying to recruit need to know who's in charge. You can't recruit people without having a manager for them to be recruited by, because it's all well and good the executive selling the club. A player needs to sit down and chat with a manager and needs to feel the warmth, needs to feel, yes, I'll play here and this guy's got some plans for me. You can't just be like, probably not going to happen, If Ten Hag is sacked, you've then got to go and appoint the new manager. Now, I believe they've been talking to managers. I genuinely believe they've been talking to managers. And if they've been talking to managers, that means that they've done something that I've been talking about doing for the longest time, which is have some sort of a live shortlist about who's available and who's not available. And that's a good idea, right? That's just a good idea. Because what you don't want is for the manager to go and you to go, now what happens? You've got to know who's coming, who's going, where you stand, and all that sort of stuff. So if you're well prepared, then sacking him shouldn't be a massive issue. If you're sticking with him, then you should tell people you're sticking with him and move forward onto the next phase. And the next phase would be transfers. There's a right load of got to go, but there's a right load that needs to come in as well. There needs to be a short list drawn up of plan A, plan B, plan C. Now, I did read something that the way INEOS are intending on working, they want to be asking the manager what position does he want strengthening in and what sort of player is he looking for in those. So you could talk about, I want a winger. Well, what sort of winger do you want? I want one that's going to deliver balls into the box, or do I want a winger that's going to drop a shoulder, cut inside and smash one with his left foot? Because that's two different styles of wingers, isn't it? So you got to say, I want a winger that's going to have more assists than goals, or more goals than assists, whichever way it is. I want a right winger that does that. It needs to have a little bit of defensive qualities about him, blah, 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 blah. And then INEOS should then come back to him once they've done the scouting, the video analysis, and they've sat around the table. You don't need the manager getting bogged down in that. He's got all of the first team to manage. And it's like looking after 25 kids. They'll all have mad problems. They'll all have, like, my bird split up with me. They'll all have all that shit going on that he needs to manage. So then you want the football board to present him, right, here's choice A, here's choice B, here's choice C. We can get all of them. We think the wages will be sound. Don't worry about the transfer fee. We'll sort that. Because the manager doesn't need to be thinking about those things. And I don't think he has in the past, really. I think he just tells the executives to go get it done. But the executives really need to be coming back to him and saying, right, here's what we've got, blah, blah, blah. Now, if you go for plan A, he's a bit spendier than the other two, which means that, that fourth choice transfer that you're looking at, that one's going to have to go, because we've only got so much money. And then it's on the manager then. He can go, right, okay, get plan A, and I'll promote someone from the academy to fill that slot that we've got for the extra centre-half or something like that. But you need to give him those options. And then you lot go on and make it happen. That's what it's all about. The transfers are absolutely vital. And there's going to be a lot of players end up leaving us. You can't be getting rinsed the way the last sort of finance team just got rinsed. We got rinsed when we were buying people, and we got rinsed when we were selling people. You genuinely could have picked out half a dozen fans from the Stretford end, and we probably would have paid less and got more in. Like, that's how bad it was. It was laughable how much United used to get for transfers. It's heavily expected that we're not going to have loads of money. So you're going to have to maximise, whether that's Greenwood, whether that's Sancho, whether that's Rashford, whether that's Anthony, whether that's Maguire, whether that's McTominay. There's 5 players there that have got a transfer value associated with them. Now, you might not want to see all 5 of those go, but if you go, well, we really do need to sign X, Y, and Z, and that requires money, you've got to be ruthless. You've got to figure out what's best for the football club. And if that means selling them 5, then that means selling them 5. No half measures. We've done half measures before. I don't want to see a striker over 30 coming in unless he's definite backup. I don't want to see like a Zlatan or a Cavani or a Ronaldo, someone that thinks they're going to still be playing. If it's an Ighalo, I don't mind that, because he knows he's coming in as backup and he's just going to be dead happy and smiley and actually put a shift in when he gets the opportunity. But you can't be signing a big money 30-plus-year-old striker. We've done so much of that in the last 10 years. From Falcao onwards, even though I think he might have been 29 when we signed him. The point stands. We can't be doing that. If you want to sign a backup for him, okay, but it needs to be someone that knows that they're a backup. Old Trafford. Now, INEOS have already sort of mentioned their intentions for the stadium. Work desperately needs to be done. And it's already a +1 on the Glazers, who just pretended that. I mean, literally nothing's happened. If you go and look at the 14, 15 years from 1989 to 2005 and just look at the transformation that Old Trafford went under, and then add into that we moved from the Cliff to Carrington in that time, we didn't know how good we had it with Martin Edwards. We really didn't. And he was constantly pushing that sort of evolution. And in the 19 years since then, Carrington's fell into disrepair and Old Trafford needs a Karcher around the bastard like you've never fucking believed. So the stadium's got the leaks are one thing, and I'm not just talking about the information getting out. I'm talking about the state of it when there's waterfalls coming through the executive areas and into the opposition changing rooms. It's not acceptable, is it? Like, how are you talking that you're the biggest club in the world and this, that and the other, and then the jewel in our crown, the one property that we own that the world comes to see and photograph, isn't fit for purpose and can't keep out Manchester weather? Like having a stadium in Madrid that couldn't handle the sun. And when it was too hot, everything started melting and just frazzling. You see how ridiculous that sounds? Well, we got it. We got the Manchester version of it. Leaks when it rains. Whether it's the talk of a new stadium or revamping Old Trafford, you know my feelings on how I would like to go with that. But be decisive and make it the best stadium in the country again. We're the most supported club. I'm not saying we deserve it, 'cause it's very entitled to say that, but if you call yourself the biggest club in the country, how are you not thinking that you have to also have the best stadium? Everything about Manchester United should be the best. We should have the best fucking pies. Why are we not seeing that United's pies win awards? Why? What's the reason for not having the best pies? What's the reason for not having the best selections of beers at half time? What's the reason for any of that? Why can't we do that? What's the reason for not having the best training ground? How are you overtaken by the likes of Leicester? Harry Maguire paid for that training ground, by the way. What's the reason for not having the best stadium? What's the reason for not having the best view? What's the reason for not having the best atmosphere? What's the reason for not having the best ticket prices? What's the reason for all of that? What's the reason for not having the best connection to the fans from the club? You can't give me a reason. There is no reason. And that's what United should be aiming for, because they've got the pull to do that. Mason Greenwood. Now, It's an entirely different issue, but INEOS will be judged on it if they get it wrong. Everybody seems like they've got their own thoughts on this. I've already given my view on it. I'm not going to go deeply into it again. I don't see how he can come back to Manchester United. And I think knowing the shit show that exists around United for any reason, bringing him back would be bad for everybody involved. He's gone and done well on his loan. And I think that you should use that to allow him to go somewhere and take the money for him. Morally, financially, I didn't like that they've consulted the women's team. That feels patronising. Why not have a set of bollocks on you and say, no, we don't need to consult the women's team? Like, the consultation with the women's team, to me, tells me, like, you wanted to bring him back, but let me just check in with all these birds. It feels patronising as fuck. Why do you need to check in with the women's team? Why not just have a moral fucking compass about this thing? You get this wrong and it will have serious repercussions. Financially with sponsors, but also there's a lot of fans just saying, I heard what I heard and that'll be me done. And the noise that surrounds the Greenwood thing, there's other players playing in Premier League teams that have had nothing. And they've had similar situations to Mason Greenwood. Not the same situation, but similar situations. And the difference is deafening. And then INEOS get a different job throughout the season next year. Then there has to be constant, dedicated reviews of the situations going on at the club. Is the youth team doing the right thing? Are we missing out on talent? Are they going to City? Are they going to Chelsea? What are we doing to develop the best talent in Manchester? There has to be a fair review. If it's Ten Hag, there has to be a fair review of his performance, and then his contract situation has to be resolved. Come January, if there's any gaps in the squad, whether it's injuries or performance, INEOS needs to be able to plan and address those issues. Because addressing an issue in January, as we've seen in past years, can be the difference between you pushing on and winning something and failing and falling behind. United can have a season out of the Champions League. We don't like it, but we can have a season out of the Champions League. You can't have 2, 3, 4, 5 seasons out of the Champions League. That's when it starts getting a bit west. INEOS have got a massive job. Very clear what they need to address over the next year. A lot of work for them to do because of the rot that's been set in for the last 19 years. None of the problems seem like they've got easy solutions either, really. There's difficult decisions and you could misstep with good intentions and the consequences could be dire. We'll find out if they've got the bottle to make the big decisions. It's been so far so good. I think they're going to get criticised whatever happens with Ten Hag, to be honest. If they keep him, they'll be criticised, and if they sack him, they'll be criticised. I think how they handle this, not just in the action, but in how everything's communicated, will be really key to them. It's going to be a wild summer. The transfer rumours haven't even kicked in yet, but they will. The journalists are probably just having a week off, and then they'll be all like, right then, let's get the fingers going. Anyway, take it easy. I'll see you in the next one. Hey, thank you for watching the video. If you are new around these parts, then don't forget to subscribe. My channel is proudly supported by my community on Patreon. If you'd like to get a little bit of extra content, a Discord group, meetups, five-a-side games, weekly podcasts, behind the scenes, and even an occasional bit of transfer news as and when I get it, then for the price of a pint, you can show your appreciation for the content that we make and get some goodies for doing so as well. Check the link in the description or click the button right here. You'll also find all of my socials here too if you want to follow me on any of those platforms. Nice one.